Welcome back. Today I want to talk about why you can't learn Python. And I mean, it's not like you can't, it's like why you are not able to learn regardless of how much you try. Because I've been in that place. So for example, it took several years for me to learn Python. I tried in the past, I think, since 2010, I tried to learn a programming language. I started, of course, with HTML and also JavaScript, learned a bit of JavaScript, but nothing very professional, just for some personal projects. So I will give you my point of view, my experience on how it went and why I was not able to learn it. So the first point here is you don't know where to start. This was my experience. Unfortunately, I tried back in the days in 2010, 2012, even 2015, there weren't so many tutorials available on YouTube. There were, of course, paid courses available, but I didn't know which one is the best one, and I basically didn't know which programming language to start. Basically, what should be the road in order to learn a programming language, because there were some tutorials on YouTube, but nothing explained what you need to learn, and I will cover that point in some minutes, but this is basically the main problem. You don't know where to start. The second point is be aware when using multiple sources. For example, there are a lot of tutorials available now and a lot of YouTubers, a lot of programmers. Each programmer has its own way of writing code. You can find two programmers writing code in the same way, but on the long run, let's say you're working on a project that has 2000 lines, you will have a lot of differences. So be aware, it's very beneficial to use multiple sources, but it might be the case that different programmers have different methods of writing code, and then you can go, for example, on a for loop, and then you can check another tutorial about for loops and you will see it written in a different way, and you will think something like, oh, but I remember learning it in a different way, why it's written this way, and you'll be very confused, so be aware about that. The third point is focus on a niche. It will be somehow related to the next point, which will be don't learn at all, or don't try to learn at all, because, for example, when I started to learn Python, I started with scrapers, but I wanted to learn Flask and Django, and I wanted to build web applications, and also I was building, at my previous job, I was building desktop applications, and I wanted to do that also for my job. So don't try to learn everything at once. You need time to focus on each niche. Try to start with some projects that you need. This is where the motivation comes from. So for example, if you have to do some manual tasks at your job, try to automate those tasks. Try to learn something that you need, not something that someone else tells you that you need it. The next point is practice is key, and we have in parentheses with projects, and I will tell you why. When I started to learn Python, everything was very foggy for me because I didn't know where to start. Everyone was speaking about variables, objects, classes, and so on. So it's good to learn the theory, but in the same time you need to practice, because you can learn everything. You can do a step-by-step tutorial from A to Z, or from those tutorials from zero to hero, or something like that. It doesn't work in that way. I mean, for me at least, it didn't work. W3 Schools is a good example because they are sharing examples for each lesson, and you can see how it works. But from my experience, I advise you to learn something that you need to build project. This is how I learned Python. I was doing web scraping with VBA macros inside Excel when Internet Explorer was on the wave. Since it was announced that Internet Explorer will be deprecated and will no longer receive support, I needed to find something else. I find a way to use Selenium with Google Chrome on VBA macros, but it was like hell because it was so slow. Excel is already slow. Google made it slower, the scraping and everything else. So I needed to find a different method. And I heard about Python. I heard that it's very easy to build scrapers in Python. And I started with scrapers. I had a little bit of theory from VBA, how a function works and so on. But it was easy to learn Python because I already knew what I want to do. I already knew what will be the final project. So it's helpful to learn the theory, but you need a lot of practice. You need to start with the final projects in mind. What do you want to do? It's not enough to have some 3-4 projects at the end of a course or a tutorial and learn about a specific thing that the teacher wants you to learn. You need a project that helps you with it. You need that you will put passion into it. The next point is learn it step by step. So for example, I started with web scrapers, as I said, and then I made the connections to pandas in order to export everything to Excel, the results and so on, tweaking a little bit the functions, how functions work and such. So just go step by step and discover things while you need them. For example, I didn't touch regex until I needed. It was again a scraping project, but the website was so awful developed that when I tried to target a specific ID, it had like half of the page of information and I needed just 2 words. It was a last name and first name or something like that. So learn it step by step. When you need something, like I needed regex, start learning regex. Or if you need to deploy your application on the web, start learning a framework for web development like Flask or Django or such. But don't learn everything in one single shot. Take it step by step. The next one, and you're gonna laugh, it's don't buy books. And trust me, I did, and it's not so helpful. For example, I mean, you can buy books to learn the basics. You can buy a Python beginner's book or something like that. It will still be useful. I think it's more useful to learn something from YouTube, for example, because you have the chance to write it in the same time. You can pause and such. I like to read physical books and touch the paper more than I like reading on Kindle, for example. But for programming, it's kind of harder because you will need to write the code in the same time that you're reading the book. You have to pay attention to the book, you have to pay attention to the keyboard, to the monitor and such. You will get errors because maybe you will have a typo or such. It's pretty hard to debug. And the next example, and I think the best example for this advice, is that last year I ordered a book about Selenium and was something like Selenium begin to export or something like that, or it was 2 years ago. I don't remember, to be honest, but it took a lot of time. It took like 3 or 4 months to receive the book because my local shop didn't have it in stock, but they didn't specify it. They specified something like it's in our deposit or something like that. It was Christmas period, so I ordered it somewhere in November and I received it at the beginning of February or something like that. The thing is, while I waited to receive the book, the Selenium module updated. So, for example, the biggest change was, let's say you'll have the browser dot find element by ID, let's say. And here you can specify the ID name or something like that. The thing is, when I received the book after all this time, the syntax of Selenium changed. So instead of this, it was browser.findElement and then by.id and specifying the name. So it was a huge change. This is the main reason why I'm not advising to buy a book. Of course, you can buy a book to learn the basic things, the principles, but in the long way, the modules are updating so fast that the book can be outdated even after 1 month since it was published. So this is why I don't advise buying books. They are becoming so easily outdated that it's not useful anymore, to be honest. I mean, look at this example with the Selenium. I can't learn anything from that book at this point because the syntax is different. So my advice is just try to learn from YouTube. Once you learn everything from YouTube, there are a lot of good tutorials and courses on Udemy, for example, if you want to pay some money and learn something more for more experienced users. So skip the box, please. The next point is there is no fast way, and it takes usually a lot of time. There is no fast way in doing anything. Like you will see, learn Python in 3 days, learn Python in 1 week, learn Python in 1 month. From my perspective, you will need at least 1 year to learn a programming language in order to use it. You will not be expert, you won't know everything about it, you won't be able to solve all the issues, but at least you will have some good basics. You'll know what to search for when you have an issue. You need time. Nothing works fast forward. Like you can't get rid of weight in a fast way, you can't make money in a fast way. I mean, you can, and you can. It's the same thing on learning programming. If you do it in a fast way, for example, if you lose weight in a fast way, like you will starve or you will not eat, you'll eat just once a day 200 or 300 calories or something like that, you will lose weight. But guess what? You'll get tired, you'll get bored, you will get, let's say, even angry that you have to stick to this way of doing it, that you will give up. And once you will give up, once you will start eating again the same quantity that you ate before starting this insane diet, you'll gain weight a lot. So you will be even heavier than when starting to lose weight. It's the same with money. You can get rich very easy. Let's say if you won a lottery, let's say you will won $100,000. If you don't know how it should be the process to make money, to earn money, you will lose it all very, very fast. You don't know how to invest, you don't know how to save, you don't have a financial education. So that money, you'll lose that money very fast. It's also the same with investing. If you just, let's say, invest $1,000 in Bitcoin and tomorrow it will be, I don't know, 10 times the price, you will have $10,000. But you don't know how investing works. So you can keep it, and in 1 week can be less than what you invested, or you can withdraw it and invest in different coins, and you'll lose it like in a few days or something like this. It's the same thing with programming. If you are skipping steps and you'll try to learn it in a very fast manner, you'll skip some important steps, some basic knowledge that you have to have in order to learn a programming language. And in the long run, you'll realize that you don't know basic stuff, and it's pretty hard to learn them after. The next advice is don't rush to get a job, or at least keep searching after. And why I say that? As I said, I learned Python to build web scrapers for my previous job. And once I learned it, everything that I did was web scrapers. And it was a real pain. You won't have the motivation to learn something else. You'll be tired of doing the same thing over and over. So don't rush getting a job that does, I don't know, only data processing. I mean, you can get it, but you will have to keep searching for another one, or you will have to put a lot of effort to continuously learn. Don't stay at the same job that you got as a junior, because you will stay there and you'll just be able to get only junior jobs after a few years. The last advice is that there is no end. You'll have to continue learn. If you think you learned everything for your current niche, like I learned everything for web scraping at that specific point, start with something new, extend your niche or change it. Start learning about data processing, start learning about, I don't know, web applications or desktop applications if you built web applications before. You'll always have to learn something. And I think from all these 10 advices, the most important one is practice is the key with projects. I hired some developers for my team in the previous months, and the main thing what I was focused on was on the practice, on writing code, on reading code, not those standard questions that you find on everywhere on the internet about Python interview questions. What is a variable? What is an object? What is a class? Honestly, I don't focus so much on them, because if you know how to solve an issue in practice, that means you know the theory. If you know the theory and you just learn the theory to be able to pass the interview, those basic questions, it doesn't guarantee that you will be able to solve the issues that you will face day by day on a real life project. I've been in interviews in the past where they had like 40 questions, basic interview questions, like what is the difference between a list and a tuple? What is the difference between X and Y? When you are using a for loop, when you are using an if, and so on. If I spend like 1 day or maybe 2 days on learning all the questions available on the internet when writing Python interview questions, I would get that job, but that doesn't mean I know how to do stuff. I just learned robotic all the answers, and it's not so helpful. If you know how to build the project, for example, one of the points on the interviews that I held for when I hired my team members was you had to describe a project that you worked on, and what was the toughest point of the project, what was the part from which you learned a lot from that project, because that's what I'm interested to hear, how you solved the specific issue, how you treated the specific issue, how you move forward, how you came with a new feature, how you thought about that new feature. I'm not interested of hearing the same answers, same basic answers for all the questions that you find on the internet. It's stupid and lame in the same time. It doesn't make sense. I don't want to hear the theory because I heard it so many times. It doesn't make sense to me. I want to hear about the projects. I want to see how you think. In order to program, you need an analytical thinking. You don't need to read things, learn questions, answers, read books and so on. You need to be creative at the same time in order to build projects that are useful for the clients. So these are my points. This is how I learned. This was my path until arriving here. You don't need to know everything. You don't need, because that's why you are in a team. That's why the manager of the team has to delegate tasks, to spread the tasks among the team. You don't need to be good. You don't need to be an expert on each niche. You need to know your part and to be very good at it. That's what is making you an expert. That's what it's making you a senior among the others. This is my perspective, of course. Of course, there are some cases where a senior software developer gets paid with $500,000 per year on the large companies, but those are exceptions. Not all the developers will reach that point. Maybe not in a lifetime. Some of them will, maybe a lot of them will, but I am talking about regular developers. This video is about learning Python, where you should start. These are my 10 points on what you should do and what you shouldn't do in order to learn Python in an efficient way. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please subscribe to my channel if you are not yet a subscriber, and see you in the next one. Cheers.